Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's virtual program and a special program that we're doing in partnership with Jane's Walk, New York City. My name is Andrew Gustafson. I'm from Turnstile Tours, and we're going to give people a few more minutes to continue joining our group today. Just a few housekeeping notes about how the program works. So we encourage people to ask questions, which you can do through the chat. So my colleague Brian is behind the scenes on the chat, and we'll be passing your questions along to our guests. In just a few minutes, we're going to go live to Lakeside and Prospect Park. Where we will be joined by Corbin Laedlein, gardener for the Prospect Park Alliance, and my colleague Cindy Vandenbosch is going to be with him as well. So today we are exploring Prospect Park, and we're looking at a very specific corner of the park. We're going to be looking at the lakeside area. So I just want to pull up a map here so that you can see exactly where it is we're going. And we're going to take a little walk. We're going to explore the green roof. We're going to explore some areas around Music Island and learn about what they're planting and why they're planting what they're planting. So if you have any gardeners out there, feel free to ask away. So this is the area that we're looking at. So the southeast corner of the park, right on the edge of the lake, and we're going to be starting up on top of the LeFrak Center. Right over here, and then we're going to be walking around and taking a little look in the area around Music Island. So that's where we're headed today. So again, we encourage you to ask questions. All right, so why don't we go to our guest today?
Hello.
Hi, Corbin. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How's everyone? Yeah, welcome to Lakeside. Yeah, as you can see behind me, you've got the lake there. As you saw on the map, that's the lake right behind me. We're on top of the LeFrak Center. And yeah, like Andrew said, my name is Corbin Laedlein. I'm the lead EcoZone Gardener here at this zone, what we call the Lakeside Zone. Yeah, and Andrew, interrupt me at any moment, or is there any questions or anything you want me to touch on? But yeah, so I work for the Prospect Park Alliance, which is a nonprofit that was started in 1987 that works with the city to sustain the park, what we call Brooklyn's backyard. We help to take care of the woodland areas, the horticulture areas, natural areas, the buildings, the landscapes, and we also have educational and volunteer programming. So I work in the horticulture landscape maintenance department, and yeah, so I'll give a little rundown of more about where we are. Like I said, this is Lakeside. This is the newest, one of the newest redeveloped, or actually we have some other things that were redeveloped recently, but this is like the largest capital project since the Alliance was founded, and it was completed in 2013. And as you see behind me, part of it, we've got a splash pad and a skating rink that were just converted back from being ice rinks. And they replaced an ice rink that used to be here. I don't know if folks remember what the park was in this area prior to 2013, but there was another skating rink that had been built there by Robert Moses, and so what this project did was it changed or restored some of that area back to the original Olmsted and Vaux design, and it created this LeFrak Center, which used a lot of sustainable building methods that we can get into, and one of them is the green roof that we're on, and as you'll see, we're on top of the building now, and to my left, we have plants on top of the building. We have a green roof on top of this canopy. And so I'm gonna go a little bit into that. So there are two different kinds of green roofs we have on the top of here. On my left is what we call an intensive green roof, which is maybe a little bit different than some of the green roofs you're used to. And that's because it's deeper and it has kind of a variable depth. And you'll see this green roof can sustain shrubs and trees, and so it kind of has a topography to it. It has dips and that allow for the root balls of the different shrubs and trees we have growing here, and then it's shallower in the areas where we have perennials planted, and it's fed. You'll see there's a gutter that goes along here that collects rainwater and irrigates it. And it needs to be irrigated because the growing medium it's in is actually an engineered soil that is lightweight, to prevent too much weight on top of the building, but it also has a high drainage. So we have an irrigation system here that's fed by the rainwater, which is pretty cool. And then the other kind of green roof we have, which may be the one folks are more familiar with, is the extensive green roof. And that's on top of this canopy above the skating rink. And that is like 2 inches of soil, the engineered soil, and it's got sedum growing in there. And those are the, the small succulents that are just super tough, don't need a lot of maintenance. So we just go up there, a few times a year to do a little weeding.
And Corbin, I'm just going to show a picture of the extensive green roof.
Yeah, is that the one with Chris up there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we just get a ladder. We go up there a few times a year. Some birds might deposit some seeds, and then so we just got to clean that up. But yeah, it's super low maintenance. So yeah, and so Chris, who's in that photo, Jesse, and myself, we're the EcoZone gardeners for this area. And EcoZone Gardener is kind of a new title we have that kind of is in alignment with how we, the new direction for managing the park. And that has been kind of a convergence with the natural areas, woodland areas, and the formal horticultural areas. Over the years, the kind of philosophy and methods of landscape management in those two areas have merged. And so now we have folks like myself who do both management in the woodland areas surrounding here and in the formal, horticultural areas. And the management of the two areas are different, but more and more we're as far as like what we're thinking about when selecting plants is very much aligned. And a lot of that has to do with heavy emphasis of native plants, supporting wildlife, and also making it just beautiful experience for park goers. And so I guess what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give a little the music just came on. Going to go through some of the plants we have here and talk a little bit about more of some of the design considerations, and then get into some of how we maintain a space like this. And so like I said, the emphasis here is like on making a landscape that's beautiful for park goers, that benefits the wildlife here, and that means landscapes that are dominated by native plants and we're talking about native plants as plants that have kind of co-evolved with the wildlife here, that have are adapted to this climate, and so as you'll see, it's spring now. We have some of them in bloom, and the thing that's great about native plants is that they tend to be pretty low maintenance in comparison to some of the other ornamental plants used in horticulture. And so once you get them established, the idea is to get them established, and then you can do some maintaining here and there, but it's they should be at a place where they can be pretty self-sufficient. They provide nectar, pollen, seeds and berries as food sources for wildlife, and they also provide shelter, which is great. I don't know if you could see, this is a really interesting plant. It's called Rus aromatica. It has these tiny yellow flowers. This is a fragrant sumac, and it has a kind of like, I guess this is kind of like a citrusy kind of smell. Unfortunately, you can't smell through Zoom, but it's cool. It kind of it's like a low growing shrub, and it provides a lot of shelter for different wildlife, which is great. And similarly, if you look in the back there, we have a lot of hollies growing here, which provide awesome shelter for birds and other small mammals. We have plants here like elderberries and different species of rubus, which have hollow canes, which allow for different insects to shelter or to nest there. And so those are some of the considerations or the benefits that come from having native plants that have specific relationships with the wildlife. And before we go over there, I just want to show y'all this one plant that I particularly love. It's called Fothergilla gardeni, and it's towards the end of its bloom time, but you know, the flowers are still out, and it's in the witch hazel family. And if you see like the buds here, they look very similar, and the leaves look very similar to witch hazel, but the flowers are very different, and they have this like bottle brush thing going on. They're just like really interesting, unique looking shrub that we have here that I really enjoy. And so we're gonna cross over here. Please holler if there are any questions.
Yeah, Corbin, we had a question, which is,
Yeah.
so how do you talked about some of the factors that go into making the decision, for why you choose certain plants. But how do you ultimately decide? Do you get to use some of your personal preferences, things that you particularly like, or how does that decision making work?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Well, here at the LeFrak Center, there was like a formal like design, and so we can refer to that design of what was originally put there. And you know, granted, it's like, you know, like any landscape, it's going to evolve. Like succession is going to happen as the trees get bigger, and like full sun areas turn to part shade, and so that's going to change how we're going to plant in the future. So we have kind of, in this area, we have like a palette that we like draw from. And part of that with the design is, you know, you'll see there are a lot of white blooming plants, yellow blooming plants. And so those are some of the things that we bring into consideration. And so for this area specifically, we kind of have a specific palette we can draw from. In some of the other areas in the surrounding, Howard, who did a talk with y'all, who's our forest ecologist, like Howard and the directors of horticulture here, they have like a list of plants that we kind of try to stick to that are known to do well in our park, that have great wildlife benefits. And so we then have a palette that we can kind of draw from, and that's where our considerations and what we're interested in, you know, it's kind of like always a conversation between like what we're thinking, what they're thinking, and like also based on our experiences of what works here in the park. So yeah, I hope that helped.
And speaking of plants, Margot had a question, which was that witch hazel like plant that you pointed to before. What was the name of that?
Oh, it's called Fothergilla gardeni. Fothera Gardeni, Gardenii. Yeah, I'm blanking on the common name, but hopefully that helps.
Usually most of us can't remember the Latin name, but you're the other way around.
Yeah, it depends on you know, sometimes I learn the common name first, sometimes it's the Latin name, and one of them ends up sticking. So you'll hear me using both. So yeah, so just want to point out some of the other interesting plants here. This one, well, we have this beautiful dogwood, and you see I have a robin in there. And this is a Cornus florida, and yeah, the dogwood, many of you I'm sure are familiar with them. It's just like a beautiful ornamental tree. It has these like really nice ornamental bracts, which are the white pieces on, you know, bordering surrounding the flower, and then the flowers are actually the actual flowers is this little cluster here. But yeah, we have a number of dogwoods, like super beautiful. We have in here on the ground below, we have this awesome plant. Yeah, this awesome plant, yarrow. And it's kind of has this like fern-like look. Folks many are probably familiar with it. Has some medicinal uses, but this is actually a non-native species that was what we call naturalized. And so it kind of like plays well with others. It's not super invasive, not in the park at least. And you see it's like growing alongside. We have some mountain mints, which is one of my favorite plants here. And we'll see there's some Monarda, but the mountain mint is a native mint, Pycnanthemum muticum, short-tooth mountain mint. And when it comes to the late summer into the fall, like this place is like absolutely buzzing. Like they love the mountain mint, the different pollinators. And then maybe to just like highlight, going to talk a little bit about the management of our approach to management. And, we try to follow some of the principles of ecological landscaping. And so that's like a little bit different than some of the kind of more conventional horticultural methods. And so you'll notice that, in the mountain mint here, the seed heads are still up. And so some of the things that we try to do is, both in the more, increasingly in the horticultural areas, and definitely in the woodland natural areas, is like to kind of mimic the processes of the forest. And that might include like nutrient cycling. So we have a practice of not kind of removing the seed heads and the dead stalks and taking them elsewhere. We're leaving them up and allowing them to molt naturally, or if we have to, we'll like leave them at the site. And what that does, which is good, is another way that supports wildlife, is the seeds on the seed heads. They stay for the migratory birds to eat, for other small mammals to eat, for insects to eat, and also it provides nutrient cycling. So like, the nutrients that were drawn up to give the energy of the plant to create those stalks then gets deposited back into the soil and feeds the plant. So that's like part of our approach to management. And another thing, this is the Monarda. You hear it, and is this is also in the mint family. This is some common names include bee balm or wild bergamot. It has these like serrated leaves, which is a good way to kind of differentiate them from the mountain mint here. And this is an awesome plant. Bees, all kinds of pollinators love it. In the fall, they're also buzzing all around it. But another thing that's great about many native plants is that they have what's called a specific relationship with a certain pollinator or a kind of wildlife. Like a common one folks know is like the relationship with milkweeds and monarchs. How the caterpillar will only feed on the milkweed. And we do have Asclepias tuberosa, which is like a butterfly weed. So, and we do get monarchs here, which is awesome. But the Monarda is another one that has a relationship with a kind of native bee called a sweat bee. And so yeah, it's great to always learn about these relationships.
And Corbin, we have a picture of that I can show, but Elisa had a question, which is about some of the other wildlife that you might get up here. So we've seen a few birds and we can hear them, but do you get any, say, mammals in this area as well?
Yeah, definitely. That would be an interesting conversation to have with Marty, who's our amazing wildlife and aquatic technician. She is an expert in all that, but we have raccoons, possums, squirrels, of course, chipmunks, and maybe when we get down to Music Island, we'll see a little bit more. But we have a ton of turtles, both native and non-native turtles, snapping turtles. I don't know if y'all heard, like someone last year dumped a bunch of eel into the lake, so I guess we have eel now too. But yeah, so and we also and we have small birds, migratory birds, and we also have some larger like raptors and owls occasionally, which is awesome, to be able to provide that kind of habitat. A bald eagle was spotted earlier this year, which was super awesome. So you showed the picture of the sweat bee, which is cool, and it's awesome to learn about thinking ecologically, because it's always about like the relationships and it's not about like, oh, this one species of sweat bee, but it's like having pollinator plants that attract all kinds of pollinators. You then are able to feed the dragonfly population, and having a healthy dragonfly population, another prey of theirs are mosquitoes. Then you have a lower mosquito population. It's just like this kind of learning about these relationships and how native plants can support, a healthy like balance of these things. And so yeah, I was thinking I'm gonna keep just pointing out some interesting plants as we go along, but I wanted to show you, this here. This is yellow rocket, and which is a weed. Thankfully, it like fits in with the color palette, so people might not suspect. But one of the things that we try to do with maintaining the landscape here is to reduce soil disturbance. And one of the reasons why that is because, you know, we have so many seeds from all kinds of, you know, things that we would consider weeds or not, you know, things that we'd consider like less desirable to have in the landscape here. You know, every year, you know, they're being deposited into the soil, whether it's from being wind dispersed or birds like pooping them out or what have you. And every time you disturb the soil, that gives an opportunity for something that's more difficult to manage to establish itself. And so, you know, it's kind of inevitable. We're going to have to disturb the soil, you know, at times, but if we can avoid it, we do. And so, like, for something like this is a biennial yellow rocket. And so what we do with something like this, you know, we have Monarda and Mountain Mint and Yarrow here, and what's happening now is the yellow rocket is kind of shading it out. And so rather than just like pulling everything and like disturbing all that soil, what we would do is just cut them at the base. And then that gives, you know, whatever's growing underneath it a little more sunlight, a little more of a chance. And hopefully, because like all of its energy has been going into producing these flowers and seed heads and stuff, it won't have enough energy to kind of grow back. And so, like, that's with like annuals and biennials, that's kind of our approach. And that kind of helps. You know, we did a planting here in the fall of 2019, and then with COVID, there was like a period where we weren't coming in, so we weren't able to be on top of like caring for the new plantings here. So there were some casualties, but some made it, and we're trying to support them as much as we can. But then for like other weeds we have, like this one here is Canada thistle, and this is one of the more challenging weeds we have here. And you see right here, it's challenging, one, because it's covered in spikes and it hurts, but it also yeah, it's a perennial, and it has wind dispersed seeds. The seeds, you know, I read that the seeds last in the soil for 22 years, and then it has a root system that goes way deep. And it's kind of like, you know, if you try to pull it out, it's going to break off. And then it's kind of like, what is it called? With the broomstick that keeps multiplying, you know, it's like every time you pull it, it's like 3 more will come up. And so,
oh, like Fantasia.
So like Fantasia, yeah. So that's like the situation with the Canada thistle. So our approach there is, one, we wouldn't pull it because of the soil disturb. With other perennials, we would pull them because they're just going to keep, you know, there's no other way, like, you know, cutting is not going to do it. But with this, our approach is like just to, at very least, prevent more seeds from being deposited into the soil. So we'll try to get them before they produce seed, but also, like, you know, maybe like death by 1,000 cuts. You know, just keep at it, keep on top of it. So we can do that. And this is another awesome tree or shrub that we have here, Amelanchier canadensis, and this just finished blooming. They have beautiful white flowers, and now berries are forming. Common names include like Juneberry or serviceberry, and this is awesome for wildlife. Birds absolutely love it. So yeah, it's an awesome tree we have here. And then next we have Betula niger, which is the river birch. And, you know, one of the things we try to do is make sure that there are things interesting, both for wildlife and for humans year round. And so one of the things that the considerations is then in the winter, like making sure they're like what we call winter interest. So like this bark is like really beautiful, really ornamental of the river birch. And so that's something that's kind of like stands out in the landscape in the winter, but, you know, throughout the year, it's super beautiful. And another thing I think that's noteworthy about, you know, including trees like the river birch, or, you know, there's some other trees like sweet gum, like trees that have a native range that goes further south and also is like adaptable to different kinds of environments. Like the river birch, for instance, as the name would suggest, like is happy on a riverbank, like it likes having its feet wet, but it could also be up here in a drier area. You know, thinking about climate change and how which trees or plants are going to be able to adapt to a changing climate. So like the river birch is like one that, you know, because it has a distribution that's so wide down the southeastern US, like that is one that we might assume might be able to better handle some of the changes in climate. Whereas, you know, it's sugar maple, sadly, is one of the trees that is expected to have a tougher time in this area as the climate warms up. So
And
yeah.
Corbin, you mentioned before this concept of planting pallets, right? And a lot of those pallets that they're devised with, you know, climate change and using climate models in mind, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that would be something I believe Howard spoke about that at his tour, but that's something that, you know, the forest ecologist, you know, kind of drawing from the data and the science, what the scientific community, their research is suggesting. That's kind of where we might get some of that information from to help inform, you know, the pallets, the planting pallets. So yeah. So yeah, let's see. Oh, this is a really cool tree that I like also, coming up here. It's a shrub rather, Chionanthus virginicus, and this is the white fringe tree. It's in the olive family, which is cool because when it's blooming, it kind of looks like an olive flower from an olive tree, if folks are familiar with it. Really like delicate white flowers. Pollinators love it, and it is native to the eastern US. So yeah, this will be blooming later in the year. So like if folks come through, I believe in the summer, folks can come enjoy this. But yeah, Chionanthus virginicus, and it's the white fringe tree. Yeah, it's really awesome shrub. We have a few here, and so yeah, another. So yeah, it's spring now, so we're just starting planting, and we have Chris here, Chris Pierce, who's one of our zone gardeners that works here, and so this is an area that we cleared last summer. We had some awesome interns with us. You know, shout out to Raven and Laedlein, and we cleared this area of mugwort, which is a perennial perennial weed that is causes a big headache for us in the park, and it spreads via rhizomes, which are kind of like a lateral underground stem that it allows to kind of like establish itself really really well in an area. And so you kind of have to dig up all of the rhizomes, which cause a lot of soil disturbance, but it's like you don't really have another choice. So this is the area we cleared, and now we're planting a few things in the back there. We have Alemus virginicus, which is Virginia wild rye, which is a native grass. And then in the front here, we're planting Penstemon digitalis. So that's, yeah, these here, it's Penstemon digitalis. The common name for that is foxglove beard tongue. Yeah, that's, and so Chris is planting that in this area, and we'll be taking care of that. And the thing that's cool about Penstemon digitalis is that it blooms like in the late spring to the summer. So it kind of fills this gap between the spring blooms and the the summer blooms. And sorry, one second. And so that's what, like, this concept of like keeping the restaurant open year round, you know, so making sure that bloom times are staggered. And so Penstemon digitalis is one of those, and it also has a specialist relationship with a type of mason bee that's a native bee that specifically gets its nectar from flowers in the Penstemon genus. So yeah, so that's some of the planting we'll do here, and then in the coming weeks we'll be doing a lot more planting in some areas that yeah, we've cleared or will be clearing for here in Lakeside and in the surrounding area. So yeah, now we're down. We're off the roof now.
We had a question actually.
Yeah.
Where do the plants come from that you're planting?
Yeah, it's a great question. Oh, so these plants here came from, we have a nursery bed here where we've kind of like have a bunch of plants that can just be taken in a pinch and like planted in some areas. But we order plants from a few different sources, and it changes based on availability, what we're looking for. Like I think in our region, we have like quite a number of nurseries that we can get plants from, including Greenbelt, which is the city nursery, and some other ones. I wrote down the ones we ordered from this year. I don't know if that's like helpful, but we got, let's see, there's Long Island Natives, where we got some. Let's see. Yeah, Long Island Natives was one. Yeah, I'm blanking on some of the others. I thought I wrote them down.
That's okay. But you get them from nurseries. You know, you're not doing all the nursery inside the park, right?
Yeah, no. In the past, we have done some propagation here in the park, and you know, we do collect seeds at times, and we'll like, you know, kind of do some seeding where we can, from seed that we've saved ourselves. But oftentimes we're going to regional nurseries and ordering them. Yeah, and there are a lot of great nurseries that, you know, specialize in native plants that we're able to get them from. So yeah, so now we're off the green roof. So we kind of made the transition. So this is just, you know, soil. It's not engineered soil anymore that the plants are growing in. And if you see to my right, we have the concert grove, the lower concert grove. And so this is where the old skating rink used to be. It was kind of plopped right on top of here. And so all of this esplanade, this like wall here, was restored, as well as Music Island, which is what we're gonna go check out now. And this was restored back to the original Olmsted and Vaux design. And I was told that, like, you know, as they were doing the excavating, they like found like, oh, a piece of the rail, you know, an urn or something that allowed them to kind of like recreate some of the architectural elements back to like what the original design was, which is cool. And so here, yeah, we have Music Island. Sorry, excuse the plane going overhead, but we have Music Island here, and the original concept in the design was to, you know, it was called Music Island because you'd have like, the idea was to have musicians here playing, and then folks in the concert grove enjoying it. But my understanding is that didn't last too long because the acoustics didn't work so well. But yeah, this was restored. And so we've been out here last year with, like, you know, tremendous help from our volunteers to kind of clear some of the invasive vines and trees. And so we've been doing some seeding and some planting. We had to pause because, as you see, we've got the mama swan over there. She's nesting and caring for her eggs. So we're kind of like letting her be. And Marty has been supporting her and doing an awesome job. But yeah, you see, like, Music Island is a great like way to, you know, it supports wildlife, from the swans to the geese to the turtles. I don't know if you can see those, but yeah. So that's another part of the work we do, and it's always like a new challenge. Like, how do we get all the plant material off of Music Island? And we use Marty's boat, and she takes us over to another spot to get it off the island and to make sure it's looking all right. But yeah, so
I'm just going to show a picture real quick here of what the Music Island used to look like. So this was the bandstand. So you can see over here on the right, and the crowds gathered around to listen to music. But for many decades, this whole area, basically everywhere where people are standing, this was covered over by the old Woolman skating rink, which was removed to build the current Lakeside, and the island was restored, but in a different form. We can really hear the bird sounds.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not too grating.
It's not just birds we have a lot of in this area. There's also a lot of turtles, right?
Yes, there are a ton of turtles. We have both native and non-native species of turtle, and that's Howard's specialty in being able to identify them. And so yeah, they kind of bask on the rocks around here. We also have a ton of fish in the lake, and you can see. I don't know if we can see now, but if you go up to the edge of the lake and you see these kind of spots that have been cleared out. Oh no, you can't see over there. But in another spot, they kind of clean out these little spots where they lay their eggs, and so that's another interesting thing to notice here. But yeah, and so I could keep going if you want me to. We got Phragmites, which is like a super a super nightmare for us, but something we always like try to maintain to keep a nice view of the island. And with the help of our volunteers, we kind of like pull out the rhizomes from the Phragmites when we can, and try to prevent the seeds from being dispersed throughout the landscape. So yeah, I don't know if folks have any questions or anything.
Yeah, so you mentioned a few invasive species that you have to contend with, right? Could you name some of those again that are problematic in different areas?
Yeah. So in our full sun areas, the ones that are, I could show you some here. I mean, they're all around us. You'll see here we have a lot of mugwort coming up, and so this is one of the things that we try to like suppress it with different mulches and stuff, but to limited success. And so like our approach really is to kind of focus on an area, like eradicate all of the rhizomes out, and then maybe plant something else that can kind of like hold its own against it. This plant here in our full sun areas is called Gallium malugo, or is also known as like bed straw, or there's a bunch of different names. It's like sticky, kind of like hooks onto you. And this one is really challenging because it grows really fast in the early spring, and it'll kind of smother some of the perennials we have growing, and then its seeds are really small but also sticky, and so they like will just stick to everything, and then they like will kind of die and desiccate on top of the other plants. And so like if we don't stay on top of it, it kind of becomes like a vinescape, of between the gallium and some of the vines we have growing, like porcelain berry. It's an issue in the full sun areas, but also in the woodland areas, like porcelain berry, oriental bittersweet. Those are things we really try to stay on top of. And if nothing else, like make sure we're collecting the berries so they don't get distributed, put into the seed bank in the soil. Let's see what else. Bindweed is another kind of like I'm not seeing it around here, thankfully, but it's another invasive weed that is really challenging because the roots for bindweed they just go so deep. So it's just, you really can't, it's really difficult to kind of like pull it out. You just gotta keep on top of it, keep trying to get it each year, and just so yeah, it is a challenge trying to keep on top of all of the weeds. As you can imagine, it's a very large area, but we've kind of developed strategies to be, making sure we're observing the landscape, seeing where things are kind of getting out of control, and making sure we're hitting them. And yeah, in the woodland areas, yes, most of the focus is on vines, and that's like same with like in Music Island, because it became so dense and dark. You can see, I don't know if you can see here, but in the trees you'll see there are some remnants of vines that had kind of gotten caught up, and then they can strangle the trees. They can take down trees sometimes. So yeah, so those are some of the most challenging weeds that come to mind. And then there are some like yellow nut sedge, which is a sedge. It's kind of like a grass-like thing that it can go through 3 life cycles in one year, dispersing seeds each time. So that's really challenging. It's just the point of like making sure we're getting the seed heads and disposing of them, so it's not just like continually depositing them into the seed bank. But yeah, if anybody in the chat has any recommendations on how they manage some of those weeds, We're
Well,
all
I,
ears. We're always trying to learn. Yeah.
I'm sure some people also remember that a few years ago, the park got help with some goats controlling invasive species.
Yeah, yeah, that was before. Yeah, I've only worked here. I started in the summer of 2019, so that was before my time. I've heard stories about the goats, and then Marty's boat we call the floating goat, which takes care of the duckweed, which is um, a pretty bad weed that is in the lake, and so that's another strategy for the aquatic weeds that we have. And yeah, so yeah, this is the lake here. Got some like turtles like chilling, living their best life out there on that rock, and some geese. Yeah, and here, oh yeah, you can see these are the spots where fish have laid their eggs. These kind of like spots that have been cleared out, and the fish probably left because we probably startled them. But oftentimes you'll see a fish just like hanging out on top of their little spot where they laid their eggs.
So someone asked a question, what some of like the reeds are in the water?
Oh yeah, so we have Phragmites, which is I think the name is just common reed, and that's invasive. That's also it's pretty difficult to eradicate. We got to get in there with our waders, and we have like kind of waterproof gloves to try to dig them out. But yeah, so that's what we've got here, common reed, and so what we often do is we'll just try to keep them cut down so they're not producing more seeds, because it is a little easier to dig it out if it's muddy. You know what I'm saying? You can get in there, but when it gets over in like up in another area where it's like harder soil, then it gets really challenging, because the rhizomes are like very sturdy, and they're brittle too. And it's like if a little piece breaks off and floats somewhere, it's going to propagate. But we also have the cattails, and that's over here. And I'm sure folks are familiar with cattails, and so these are some of the cattails we've got here. And yeah, cattail is just a really wonderful plant, and try to keep some here without obscuring the view of Music Island.
This is not a perfect view we have on Zoom, but they look very similar.
They do, yeah. I can try to show you the different. Here we go. We got you can see the common reed. It has this one stalk, and then bits coming off of like a grass. It's got one stalk and things coming off the sides. These leaves coming off the sides. And then the cattail, if you can get down and see, it's a number of leaves coming from the base. And I don't know if you see them side by side.
Yeah.
They kind of have a different look. But yeah, there have definitely been some casualties of cattails when they've gotten confused for one another. So we got to be careful, because they do occupy the same space.
So I had a question about the team of gardeners. So how many people are working in your eco zone, and how many gardeners are there generally across the park?
Oh yeah, so in our zone, we have 3. We have myself, Chris, and Jesse. We're the eco zone gardeners for what we call the Lakeside zone, and then in total, we have. I think we have like about 7 or 8 others, and some are seasonal. We have some gardeners that work for parks, that work with us, and we also have a woodland youth crew that works during the year, which are it's a program for younger folks, and they work mostly as the name suggests, in the woodlands with Kate, who's who manages that program. And yeah, and we also have just like an incredible group of volunteers that come every week, or they come pretty much every day, and help the different gardeners in their zones. And so we've been tackling some really intense projects up on Breeze Hill over there with them, and they just are such an incredible help that help us manage this space, because even with the staff that we have, like the park itself is like 526 acres, so it's a lot to manage, and we're using, all mechanical methods, and so it's like our hands, shovels, like, other tools, but we're not spraying or anything, no chemical methods. So like, as our like main way of managing the park. So it does take a lot of work. And so the volunteers are essential for that, for sure.
Well, Howie just mentioned in the chat, he says it makes you realize that if it weren't for people like you and the other gardeners, that invasive species would overrun the park.
Yeah, it would it would kind of look like if you're driving down the south and you look, on the side of the highway, and it's just like kudzu, covering everything, just like a vinescape. Like a lot of the park would end up looking like that, if it's not managed. And the goal is to get to certain spots that are kind of like, all right, the plants are established there, like there isn't much opportunity for the invasive vines to establish themselves and or other invasives. But yeah, it's always challenging, so yeah, it definitely like is a good illustration of the necessary role that humans have in like kind of like can have in healing ecosystems and creating beneficial ecosystems. So yeah. Oh, we have a frog here. That's another kind of wildlife. I don't know if you're gonna see it, but it's kind of like, you see it right there. Oh, I do see it. So yeah, it's all kinds of cool wildlife you find here. Things that, I grew up in Brooklyn, like things you otherwise would not see, so.
And Corbin, tell us a little bit about how you got into this, because you said you've been working for the Alliance for about 2 years.
Yeah, so I started working with plants through agriculture. I worked at an urban farm in Red Hook after college, Red Hook Community Farm. That kind of like sent me down a path of working in agriculture and horticulture. And so I've had, a variety of jobs in those fields. But and I eventually was, fortunate enough to, at the right time when the Alliance was looking for a gardener, and I was looking for jobs, that I was able to work here. But it's it's awesome to be able to to work at a park that I've been visiting my whole life, and to know it in such different, more intimate way. And I appreciate being able to establish a relationship with this area of land like that. I'm able to be here every day and work with it and learn so much from my experiences here and from my colleagues, and then also to interact with the awesome people who come through. It's in a nutshell, that's how I got here. Yeah. And it's cool because you get to both do horticulture and woodland management, which is like, there's never one day that's the same, which is cool.
Well, great. If there are any other questions for Corbin, this was so fantastic, and we really only walked, maybe 100 yards, but we saw so many different plants, and it seems like we covered a lot more ground than we actually did because it's so dense right where you are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we started up there. I don't know if you could see, but to my left is the LeFrak Center now, and so we just came down back to here. But there's a ton more here in the park. For folks in New York, definitely come through. I'd especially, if you can make it in the late summer to the fall, where we've got the mountain mint and the monarda and the goldenrod and the asters. It's just like, it's phenomenal to see all the wildlife and the insects and all the amazing smells that you can experience here. But yeah, there's always something at any time of the year. There's always something interesting to see. So I invite y'all to come down and say hi if you. Well, thank you for joining me. I was a little nervous, but that was fun. Happy to do it again. Hopefully one day we'll do it in person. But yeah, support parks.
Yeah, so I mean I think that's a great note to end on, because Prospect Park, it's known as Brooklyn's backyard. It's been such an incredibly important resource throughout the pandemic, and it's obviously, we've had budget cuts, as well as, massively more users than we have before. So the parks need us now more than ever. So of course, we encourage everyone to become a member of the Prospect Park Alliance to support the park in that way. But also, if you're interested in volunteering, you can go to the Prospect Park website, and they always need volunteers for all sorts of things, including helping with the gardening crew. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, Corbin. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too. Bye, y'all.